and welcome to Redhead Reviews. I'm Mary, and let's get started.
Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention, please?
First of all, I want to give a great thanks to everybody who subscribed last week and to everybody who liked and shared. I really appreciate it. Also, I want to give a weird shout out to a company that's not sponsoring me, but I think is so cool. I'm using it right now. I just started doing the Smile Direct Club, and it's just really cool. I got the liners like a couple of weeks ago, and they just work wonders. I can already tell that they're pulling them. It's funny because I see people who review the liners and they're like, I want my money back because it hurt my teeth. And I'm like, yeah, it hurts your teeth for like the first couple of days you wear it, and then it gets comfortable like braces are supposed to do. And so I think Smile Direct Club is really awesome so far. I can already tell a difference in my teeth. And so I know this has nothing to do with Sweeney Todd, which we are about to talk about today, but I just think that Smile Direct Club deserves a really cool shout out because I am only 2 weeks in, but I already love them. I can already feel the difference. Anyways, let's move on to Sweeney Todd. So, was this too dark? Now let me tell you real quick, Sweeney Todd, if you don't know me, I am a huge musical theater buff. I've done musicals for a very long time, playing a lot of cool different characters, and I'm very thankful for the roles I've gotten to play over the years. And Sweeney Todd, if I was a dude, this would be my dream role, and it's the only male dream role that I have any interest in. It's just so complex, it's so interesting, and I'm gonna go on and tell you why, and let's go ahead and get into a little bit of history with Sweeney Todd. In 1846, a book called The String of Pearls was written by an unknown author, and it was about a man named Anthony who went into Sweeney Todd's barber shop and never came out, and his wife Johanna struggled to search for him throughout the book. Later on, a man named Christopher Bond found the story and enhanced it into the story we know today. His script was so intriguing that in 1973 it was put on Broadway as a very successful play called Sweeney Todd the Demon Barber of Fleet Street. Stephen Sondheim, one of my favorite composers of all time, ended up seeing the show and wanted so much to see if he could scare audiences. And I mean literally, that's what he said.
I just wanted to scare audiences.
Then he met up with Bond and asked if he could write a musical based off his play. And in 1979, Sweeney Todd the Musical opened on Broadway with Lynn Crowe as Sweeney Todd and Angela Lansbury as Nellie Lovett. And it was a smash hit. Audiences and critics got loving chills from it, and it ended up winning 8 Tony Awards, including Best Musical, Best Score, Best Book, and tons more. Tim Burton, while still being a film student, saw the show on Broadway and since then had always entertained the idea of creating a film adaptation of the show. And in 2006, he got his big chance with DreamWorks, originally wanting to have Sam Mendes as the director, who had been working so hard on it. For reasons unknown, producers decided to replace him with Tim Burton, who was absolutely ecstatic. Casting Helena Bonham Carter, his wife, as Mrs. Lovett, and Johnny Depp as Sweeney, producers thinking it would be risky to have Johnny sing on the film since they had no clue if he even had a voice. Had him take voice lessons, and he came out okay. And on December 21st, 2007, the movie was released. It became an artistic hit, but not a huge financial hit. But it performed well around the world for its soundtrack and DVD purchase. This film has tons of detail, and by tons, I mean tons. And today we're gonna ask the question of, was this movie way too dark? I mean, don't get me wrong, the story is dark, but I think it might have missed what makes the film dark, or what makes the story dark, I should say. I don't think Sweeney Todd is really a physical horror. I think it's more a mental horror. Just big down flow and rolling down a hill of absolute misery for Sweeney Todd, as well as some other characters. It just seems more like an emotional horror rather than a physical. I mean, don't get me wrong, it has its physical horrors, but that's not really what torments the people inside to watch Sweeney Todd. Honestly, being a huge fan of the stage show, I'm surprised I don't hate this film. There are elements in this show that usually get me fuming about movie musical adaptations, but surprisingly, they don't make me crazy here. And I'm making this video today to see why exactly it did not piss me off. So, let's dive right into Sweeney Todd. So I'm going to split this up into 3 little parts. I'm going to split it up into story, music, and then casting. And so we're going to start off with story. Let's go.
Attend the tale of Sweeney Todd.
Now, the movie seems to follow the stage version very well. They didn't keep everything, but honestly, I think what it kept in was just enough. Now, the only thing I don't like about this film that they cut out was the relationship between Anthony and Johanna. I mean, yes, even in the stage version, they weren't shown much chemistry at all, but they do show some sense of care for each other, and at least they come into some form of physical face-to-face contact. Here they exchange one glance, and that's enough? It's not even a very meaningful glance. I mean, it's just like, nah, he's cute, I guess. The thing is, I don't think people give Johanna enough credit for her character. But there's a lot more to her character than people think. Johanna is a very scared little bird in a cage. With the uncomfortable, perverse, and abuse she endures living with the judge, the fact that she comes close to Anthony and he says,
I'll steal you, Johanna.
That right there is her motivation to want to be with Anthony. I never thought it was love on her end. I always thought it was the idea of her hero. In the movie, all she knows is this guy's cute and likes to look at her. There needs to be more to the relationship than this. Another thing I don't really like about this movie is it's a little bit too bloody. I mean, yes, in the stage version there was blood and gore, but that was only a fraction of the horror that was in the story of Sweeney Todd. In the stage version, there was anger, devastation, intensity, charm, color, grief, longing, physical and emotional horror, as well as goofy humor. This film only has 3 emotions: angry, very angry, and I'm feeling okay. For example, in the show, Epiphany is my favorite song in all of Sweeney Todd, and I could do a whole 30-minute video analyzing how that song worked and why it was so amazing to me. But I'm gonna try not to get too detailed. So let's go into it for a second. Epiphany is where Sweeney finally snaps and decides to kill everybody. Now, if you break down these lyrics, there's basically a bipolar wave of emotions. Frustration.
No, I had him! His throat was bare beneath my hand.
Anger.
Come on! Sweeney's waiting! I want you, bleeder!
Stirring confusion.
There's a hole in the world like a great black pit, and it's filled with people who are filled with shit, and the vermin of the world inhabit it.
Vengeance.
And I will get him back even as he gloats. In the meantime, I'll practice on less honorable throats.
Devastation.
And my Lucy lies in ashes, and I'll never see my girl again.
And the joy and hate.
I'm alive at last, and I'm full of joy.
In the movie, he seems to have one emotion, anger. And there's not even much of a build in his anger. I mean, tell me, which one is a better build and which one is more upsetting? This one?
Not one man, no, nor 10 men, nor 100 can assuage me. I will have you.
Or?
Not one man, no, nor 10 men, nor 100 can assuage me. I will have you.
Honestly, it feels like they're trying to put more blood and gore to make up for the emotional horror that they barely have. I do like the way they show memories of the past, though. They give the past colors to represent that life back then was so much happier, and then in Poor Thing, they managed to really bring out the uncomfortable tormenting Lucy must have felt on the night she was raped. There are some things in the film that I don't really understand, though, like how Judge Turpin knew Anthony was there. I mean, they didn't even come into any contact. Or how was there any alert for the Italian to know of his accusation? One thing I hate about this film is that they give little to no attention to the beggar woman. I mean, the beggar woman's Lucy. In the stage version, they come across each other twice, and she states, and right before he ends up killing her, we get a jaw-drop moment of finding out through past songs that she is in fact Lucy. So when she is killed by him, it makes it all the more devastating. Whereas in the film, they never meet until she's killed, and the song she sings is just interpreted as a silly little ditty. If they had indicated anything at all, it would have definitely made her death a lot more devastating. I guess I actually did more complaining about the story than I was expecting. But I will say that I'm glad they kept a lot of the things they did, and they presented it very well. They presented it more like a film rather than this. All around, I think the film is okay in terms of its story. Not the best, but not the worst movie musical I've ever seen. Now let's move on to music.
Pretty women blowing up.
Now, I'm always picky about the music in Sweeney Todd. If anything is too fast, too slow, too big, too dull, I get very upset. This movie has some decent singers. They're in tune and are consistent, but there's rarely any emotion put behind any of it. The best singers in the show are Sacha Baron Cohen and little Toby. They definitely put some emotion into their music, and Sasha isn't even a singer. Helena seems to be the blandest singer in the whole show. She sings sadness, urgency, fear, excitement, all in the same tone.
Ah, but there was worse yet to come, poor thing. We'll have jams over every Friday. No, no, not light at all.
She seems to have one form of singing, and that's whisper head voice. Kind of similar with Johnny Depp. I do appreciate, though, how he sings his parts sometimes.
But there's no place like London.
Most of the time, singing in tune for musical theater can be a lot more emotional than singing in perfect pitch and perfect tone. And there are times he does do something other than whisper singing. There is one singer that really gets to me in this film, though, and that's Johanna. She barely has any voice and puts absolutely no emotion in her song.
Greenfinch and linnet birds, nightingale, blackbird, how is it you sing?
I'll get to other parts about her later, though. In terms of how they present the music altogether, they present it more like a film score rather than a musical theater score, which I kind of like. For example, in the opening of the stage show, we have a big chorus coming out to sing Sweeney Todd, the opening number. Whereas in the film, they take the music of the opening number and just change it into kind of an opening film score for the credits. And I think that's a great choice for them to do. It kind of satisfies me to know that that's still there, but at the same time, I know a creepy chorus staring at the camera for a long time would be really creepy. Honestly, that kind of sounds like a Shyamalan film. They even cut out the chorus, and God, that's good. As well as Pirelli's Miracle Elixir. Honestly, I think that's definitely a lot better for a film. It keeps it in the reality that film needs to create. There's one song in the show that I wish they didn't cut out, but not everybody does this song anyway. It's the song Judge Turpin sings about Johanna when he thinks of her in a very dirty manner. Honestly, it would have been really cool to see Alan Rickman do this song.
Deliver me! Help! Leave me! Johanna! Johanna!
Altogether, I think the music is good and tolerable. And with how picky I am about this score, that's saying a lot. So altogether, I'm shockingly satisfied. Now let's talk about casting. I'm not really going to go off a script on this one. I kind of just want to sit down and talk about each character and why I think each one was a pretty decent choice or not so great choice for their role.
It's priest. Have a little priest.
Is it really?
So let's start with Sacha Baron Cohen as Mr. Pirelli.
I am Adolfo Pirelli, the king of the barbers, the barber of kings. Buongiorno, good day. I blow you a kiss.
Now, altogether, I think Sacha Baron Cohen was a really great choice for this. We've seen him play weird Italians before, and a lot of really cool accents. Mr. Pirelli, when I looked up, the bio for him is supposed to be a very good con artist. He's supposed to be able to switch from accent to accent. In the stage version, he presents himself as this very nice Italian, when in reality, he's this old Irish boy who worked for Sweeney Todd. Whereas in the film, he's an Italian who switches over to his is original British. So altogether, I think Sacha Baron Cohen is definitely a great choice for Pirelli. And he seems to be the only one that gets anything comedic in the show, which I think is very upsetting because there's a lot of comedy in the show that they really missed. I mean, there's this part where Sacha Baron Cohen like flings his cape around and he messes it up, and I love how they kind of let it be messed up. They don't let it be perfect. And even though Sacha's not a singer, I definitely think he just let the emotions kind of take over the song, which is a great choice, especially for Signor Pirelli. So altogether, I think Sacha Baron Cohen was definitely a fantastic choice for Signor Pirelli. Let's move on to Toby.
Demons are prowling everywhere nowadays. I'll send them howling, I don't care, I got ways.
So let's talk about Toby. Toby has one of my favorite songs, if not my favorite song in the show. So Toby in the show is the little boy that Mrs. Lovett ends up saving from the abusive Pirelli, who kind of treated him as his child slave. And because of her saving him, he kind of treats him like his own mother. And so he definitely has a very strong love for her, and the boy really presents it well. He's played by this kid named Ed Sanders. To me, he doesn't look very much like an Ed. He looks more like an Oliver. I love how they keep this kind of Oliver Twist lookingness to him. I definitely think that's a great idea. He's definitely a scrawny boy, so he definitely looks the part to me, and he has a very, very beautiful little voice for a kid. He definitely gives off a great vibe of love for Mrs. Lovett, and it's, you know, it's just absolutely adorable. So honestly, I think he was a great choice for Toby, and that's as simple as that. I think he was a great choice.
Quick, so run and tell all the little witches spell. There it is, the unholy spell. Tell it to the beadle and police as well. Tell them, help, fiends, say on fire.
Now let's talk about Lucy, Lucy or the beggar woman. I think, as I said before, I think she deserved a lot more in this film than she was given. And I don't blame the actress at all. I think she definitely looked the part, and I'm sure she could have played the part great if she was given enough, but I do not think she was given enough. Honestly, Lucy needs more screen time or stage time, because there needs to be some indication of how we know her. And all we know about her in the film is she's a beggar woman, and she's a little nutty. That's all we know. In the stage version, she gets a little bit too nutty. In the stage version, it's also indicated that she's a prostitute in order to get by. Anyways, the beggar woman is played by Laura Michelle Kelly. So honestly, I think she was a good choice for it. I just don't think she was, like I said, I just don't think she was given enough. I really wish they would have had the moment where we had figured out it was Lucy before Sweeney Todd had figured it out. Because if we had had that, as well as if we had the extremes that she did in the stage version, that would have made it all the more devastating to us to see, wow, she went from this beautiful, sweet, virtuous girl to this woman who's begging on the streets, dirty as crazy as hell, and become partially a prostitute as well. It's, you know, and that's another thing about the horror of Sweeney Todd is, you never know, one little lie or one horrible thing can just alter a person from an amazing person to a horrible person, or even a horrible person to an amazing person, but it's the other way around here. So I mean, all I'm saying is I've said it over and over again, but I really wish Lucy would have gotten more screen time. Not blaming the actress, I think she did a great job, I think she looks the part, but I think she deserved a lot more than she was given.
What's an eau de cologne to press, my lord, and must to enhance the chase, my lord. You'll dazzle the girl until she bows to your every
Now let's move on to Beadle Bamford, who is played by Tim Spall in this movie, and I think he's a great choice. In the stage version, the Beadle has some very, very difficult singing parts. Like it is countertenor singing, and if you don't know what countertenor singing is, that's going to take too long to explain. Go look it up. they don't give him much to sing. I think they give him enough to sing. In fact, I think the only time he sings is is here, and he doesn't have a bad voice at all. In fact, I think he, like I said, it's kind of just speak singing, and it's fine. The Beadle doesn't really need much. He's given a lot more in the stage version, but he doesn't necessarily need it. Another thing is Tim Spall usually plays these very, very creepy characters, like when he played What's-His-Face in Enchanted, and it's just, that's what the Beadle is. He's just this really creepy dude, and Tim Spall's just a great choice for it. The Beadle Bamford is like Judge Turpin's little stooge that does anything and everything for him, and just likes to be, kind of the upper, higher mark of people. In the movie, he's interpreted a little darker, or I should say a little more violent. Then again, in the stage version, he kills a bird. But Tim Spall definitely always plays a very, very proper, creep. So honestly, like I said before, I think he's just a great choice for this role. Let's move on to Judge Turpin.
So fetch the pomade and pumice stone and lend me a more seductive tone, a sprinkling perhaps of French cologne, but first, sir, I think a shave.
Judge Turpin, played by Alan Rickman, for this type of film, for a very Tim Burton film, is a really great choice. And he sings pretty decently as Judge Turpin when he sings. I think the only time he sings is in Pretty Women, but he definitely has a pretty decent bass voice. And Alan Rickman definitely gives off a very different vibe than how the judge is usually interpreted. The judge is usually very just, I'm old and powerful and aggressive and blah blah blah, and I talk very loudly. Whereas in this, Alan Rickman can speak kind of soft, and it will be very intimidating. I don't think there's one point in the whole film where he yells. There's some people that can really just interpret things very softly and still be very intimidating. And Alan Rickman just does a great job, and he sings pretty decently. Again, I wish he had had this song.
Deliver me! Leave me! Johanna!
But he does not. But it's okay. So while in the film and the stage version, they're the same but different in their tone of the interpretation, I definitely think it's great for the film. So I think it was a great choice to choose Alan Rickman for a Tim Burton version of Sweeney Todd.
I was half convinced I'd waken, satisfied enough to dream you. Happily I was mistaken, Johanna.
Now let's move on to the guy who played Anthony, played by Jamie Campbell Bower. I think he definitely has a very sweet voice, and I think for what he was given, he did a great job. I didn't think he looked the role, though. Usually Anthony is interpreted by a very, a very strong-looking tenor who, while young, still has a very operatic voice. And his voice is very, well...
I feel you, Johanna.
And like I had said before, their romantic relationship is very glossed over. It's like little to nothing in it. The song Johanna that he sings when he meets her in the stage version is face to face with her. In the movie version, it's after their glance and he's singing it to himself. So it's just not. I mean, which one do you think is a lot more chilling and romantic? This?
I feel you, Johanna. I feel you.
Or this?
I feel you, Johanna. I feel you.
So in a sense, I think this guy, Jamie Campbell Bower, did a great job for him, but I just don't think he was right casting. I think Anthony still needs to be a little bit more you know, a little bit more manly seeming. It does not look like, the way he looks and a little bit of the way he's interpreted seems kind of, I hate to use this word, wussy. It does not look like he would go to a mental asylum to save a girl. It does not look like he would go to such extremes to save somebody. I could be very wrong, but that's just how I see it. And so, I just don't think he was the right casting. I think he did a great job for him and for what he was given, but I just don't think he looks it. Sorry.
Green finch and linnet birds, nightingale, blackbird, how is it you say?
Now let's talk about Johanna, played by Jane Weisner. No offense to this girl, I just think she was a horrible choice for this character. I think she looks the part pretty much, you know, she has the blonde hair, she's fairly pretty, but I just think, first of all, her acting is the blandest thing I've ever seen in my life. I think I've never seen her face change from anything besides this. It's just this blank look of, and I can't stand it. There's just so much more to Johanna than the script in the film gives her, and then what she gives herself. I mean, even when she's in the mental asylum, she keeps a very still face. I mean, whereas in the film, the stage version, she has this fear about her. She screams, she cries, and she just has so much. Even in the stage version, she shoots a person. Johanna shoots a person. When Anthony's going to shoot the man of the asylum, he can't do it. He has too many morals to be able to do it. But Johanna, being so tormented by what this guy did, takes the gun out of Anthony's hands and shoots him herself. Now that's pretty strong, and I wonder where she gets that from. It's just the most bland performance I've ever seen. And even so, I don't think she completely looks the part. I just don't understand why she was chosen. And either that or it could have been the direction Tim Burton gave her, I don't know. A lot of the characters kind of kept bland faces. It was very rare when I saw any real emotion behind people. So I almost want to blame Tim Burton, but that's just the blandest thing I've ever seen in my life, and I do not like it. Next.
A customer! Wait, what's your rush? What's your hurry? You gave me such a fright, I thought you was a ghost of a minute. Can't you sit? Sit you down, sit! All I meant is that I haven't seen a customer for weeks. Did you come in for...
Now we're gonna move on to Mrs. Lovett, and this role is so interesting. In fact, I call this the real villain. And I call her the real villain because if it wasn't for Mrs. Lovett's lie about Lucy being dead, and then none of this would have happened. Of course, some of it would have happened because the judge did what he did, but Sweeney Todd wouldn't have gone so crazy and sworn revenge as terrible as he did, at least. And she was the one that suggested they bake people into pies. So in my head, I call Mrs. Lovett the real villain in the show. And in the stage version, well, in the script and in the show in general, Nellie Lovett, while being what I call the real villain and being, very dark for baking people into pies, I think what makes her so interestingly scary is that she seems to be a very giddy, talkative, person. And she has lots of colors, she can be charming, she can be a little witty, and she's just all around, sometimes a goofball. In the movie, she has none of that. The only looks Helena Bonham Carter gives is, I'm frustrated and I'm feeling okay. And it's just not it's not interesting at all. It's just, she never gets away from this face, almost like Johanna. It's very rare when she smiles and she laughs, and I think there needs to be laughing and joking around, especially in A Little Priest. That whole song is a joke to them, and that's another thing that makes it so horrifying. In the movie, they take it very seriously, or at least, to me, it looks like they're taking it very seriously. Whereas in the stage version, they're joking around, they're laughing about baking a priest into a pie. How flippin' crazy is that? And so I think that's another thing that makes it horrifying that they left out, is that they think this is funny, and it's not funny. Well, you know, the situation's not funny. Sorry, I'm bringing my knee up. But, it's just, Helena Bonham Carter gives little to no smile, no laugh, and, you know, she needs a lot of laughs, especially in the song By the Sea. And in the song, at least she gives a little grin, but even so, that's nothing. It's nothing. Again, it could be directing, but to me, she was very bland in the show. And I don't understand it at all when people say they love her as Mrs. Lovett. It's just sort of like, okay, whatever. Next one, Sweeney.
And we're together, and we'll do wonders, won't we?
Now we're going to talk about Johnny Depp as Sweeney Todd, and honestly, I don't hate him as Sweeney Todd. I'm kind of surprised. Johnny, almost like Helena, you know, gives off very little emotions. Again, to me, he seems like he's got 3 emotions. Angry, very angry. Actually, that's about it. Sweeney Todd has a lot more than that. He can be bipolar. He can laugh as well. And Johnny Depp just gives little to nothing in any humor. And that's another thing that makes Sweeney Todd scary. Again, going back to Mrs. Lovett, is that he finds some things that are a little awful and horrible and immoral funny. And, you know, in the song Epiphany, like I said earlier, it has levels, and Johnny Depp just gives angry and angrier. To me, that's just not great. There's one thing that I really love about the film that they do, though, and that's when they go into the song My Friend. And if you look up Stephen Sondheim's talk about his interpretation of the song My Friend, he said that he wrote all these S's and SH's into the song to make it like a whisper to the razor. And I'm so glad that they had the music for My Friend come on the second he grabbed the razor for the first time in so many years. And that's how it's supposed to be, so it makes me so happy that they kept it that way. All around, Johnny Depp singing, I think, is, you know, it's okay. Like I said earlier, I'm glad he's saying some things. I also think Johnny Depp's a little, I think he was in his 40s when he did this movie, but he just looks too young to me. To me, Sweeney Todd looks like he's played by a guy who's either in his late 40s or early 50s. Like an older guy, and definitely more than a middle-aged guy, to me at least. To me, Johnny Depp did not look like the father of this, and while I think he did a great job for what he could do, I don't think he was the right choice for it. Sorry. Altogether, I'm surprised I don't hate this film. Maybe it's just so Tim Burton-esque that I can't hate it. And the film seems to follow its own direction well, and can be very consistent with its choices. Besides sometimes lacking emotion, being a big fan of the musical, I all around can watch the movie with ease and not get angry about its interpretation. Well, sometimes. So all around in my book, I give this movie a 3.5 stars. Did you watch the film and feel differently? Well, then hit me with it in the comments below. I'd love to read it. But always remember, I'm right. I'm Redhead Reviews, and I'll see you next time. Take care.